The alarm screamed through every corridor of Kepler Station as another explosion shook the massive mining facility. Commander Elena Rodriguez gripped the railing of the command center as sparks flew from damaged control panels around her. Diao, lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the faces of her mixed-species crew. Shield strength down to 30%, called out Lieutenant Zara Kim from her position at the defense console. Her voice stayed steady despite the fear in her eyes. We cannot take much more of this beating. Elena looked at the main display screen showing the 50 Vorthak warships surrounding their station. Each enemy vessel was 3 times larger than anything in their defense fleet. The bioorganic hulls of the Vorthak ships pulsed with a sickly green light, and any damage they took seemed to heal within minutes. How long until the civilian evacuation is complete? Elena asked her communications officer. At least 4 more hours, Commander, replied the insectoid Chithari at the comm station. His translated voice buzzed with anxiety. The transport ships can only carry so many at once. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. 4 hours. They had maybe 1 hour before their shields failed completely. 3,000 innocent beings from a dozen different species worked in the mining tunnels below. Crystalline Zephyrians who sang, while they worked, gaseous nebulites whose children floated through the station's special atmospheric zones, elderly Morvanian scholars who had come here to study the quantum crystals. All of them would die if the station fell. Commander Rodriguez, a new voice cut through the noise. War Prime Gezek himself was calling from the lead Vorthak vessel. His reptilian features filled the main screen, cold yellow eyes staring at her with casual cruelty. This is your final warning. Surrender the quantum crystal stores and we will allow the civilian transports to leave unharmed. Elena straightened her shoulders. She had served in the Galactic Defense Coalition for 15 years, fighting pirates and protecting trade routes. Never had she faced an enemy this powerful, but she knew her duty. War Prime Gezek, she replied, her voice carrying to every speaker on the station. This facility is under the protection of the Galactic Defense Coalition. We will not surrender to raiders and murderers. The Vorthak leader's laugh was like breaking glass. Brave words from someone about to die. Your energy weapons are toys. Compared to our bioships, your shields are failing. What can you possibly do against the might of the Dominion? We can fight, Elena said simply. The connection ended and immediately the Vorthak resumed their assault. Streams of corrosive bioplasma struck the station's shields, each hit weaker than before but still deadly. Elena watched the power readings drop steadily on her displays. Her tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Bright Song of Morning, sang a translation of the sensor data. Their pattern suggests they plan to board us within the hour. Once our shields fail, they will send warrior drones through the hull breaches. Elena nodded grimly. She had seen recordings of Vorthak boarding actions. The reptilian warriors were twice the size of most species and fought with savage efficiency. Her security teams would not last long in close combat. All defensive batteries, focus fire on the lead ships, she ordered. Make them pay for every meter they advance. The station's plasma cannons opened fire, sending bright blue energy beams toward the enemy fleet. A few shots found their targets, burning holes in the bioorganic hulls, but Elena could already see the wounds beginning to close. The Vorthak ships healed faster than her weapons could damage them. Another massive explosion rocked the command center. This time, one of the overhead lights broke free and crashed to the deck near Elena's feet. She stepped over the debris without breaking stride as she moved between her crew stations. Evacuation transports report they are under long range. Fire, Lieutenant Kim reported. 2 civilian ships have been damaged but are still flying. Elena felt rage burn in her chest. Attacking military targets was one thing, but firing on civilian transports violated every law of civilized warfare. The Vorthak truly were monsters. Redirect. Our fighter squadron to escort the transports, she commanded. Pull them back from the main battle. Commander, that will leave us with no mobile defense, Bright Song of Morning warned through her melodic translation device. The transports are more important than we are, Elena replied. She meant it. If the choice was between saving the station and saving the civilians, there was no choice at all. The next few minutes passed in a blur of explosions and emergency reports. Hull breaches in sections 7 and 12. Fire in the main reactor room. Casualties mounting in the security department as Vorthak biodrones began cutting through the outer hull. Elena found herself thinking about her family back on New Geneva Colony. Her parents would be proud that she stood her ground. Her little brother Jake always said he wanted to join the Coalition fleet when he grew up. She hoped he would live in a galaxy where monsters like the Vorthak could not prey on the innocent. Commander, the communications officer suddenly straightened at his station. I am detecting a new energy signature at the edge of the system. Something just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Elena looked at the long-range sensors. A single ship was approaching from the outer system, moving fast but not in any configuration she recognized. The energy readings were strange, primitive in some ways, but somehow very powerful. Can you identify the vessel? She asked. The Chithari officer worked his controls with rapid movements of his 6 arms. Negative, Commander. The design is not in any database. The materials appear to be some kind of metal alloy rather than bioorganic or crystalline composites. Elena frowned. Metal hulls had not been used by any major species for centuries. They were too heavy, too inflexible, too vulnerable to energy. Weapons. What kind of civilization still built ships out of metal? On the main screen, she could see that even the Vorthak had noticed the approaching vessel. Several of their bioships had turned sensors toward the newcomer, though they continued their assault on the station. The unknown vessel is broadcasting a signal, the communications officer reported. It appears to be some kind of identification code, but the format is completely unfamiliar. Elena made a decision that would change galactic history. Open a channel to the unknown ship. Let's see who has come to join our fight. The response came back immediately in accented but understandable galactic standard. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiance. We received your distress signal and are moving to assist. Please advise on tactical situation. The entire command center fell silent. Elena stared at the communications console as if it had grown a second head. Earth ships were myths, legends. Half the galaxy believed humans were just stories told by eccentric explorers. The other half thought they were a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. But here one was, volunteering to fight 50 Vorthak warships to save a station full of strangers. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, studying the tactical display with calm blue eyes. The holographic projection showed Kepler Station surrounded by 50 Vorthak warships, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with that distinctive green glow he had read about in intelligence reports. Captain, we are receiving multiple hails from both the station and the Vorthak fleet, reported communications specialist Amy Davis from her station near the rear of the bridge. Her fingers danced over the control panel as she filtered through the incoming transmissions. Put the station commander through first, Jake ordered. He had been in space for 12 years, starting as a junior officer on cargo haulers before working his way up to command. This was his first deep space patrol mission, and he had never expected to find himself in the middle of an interstellar war. The main screen flickered and showed a tired-looking woman in a blue coalition uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back, in a military style, and her eyes held the determination of someone who refused to give up even when facing impossible odds. This is Commander Elena Rodriguez of Kepler Station, she said, her voice carrying across the light years instantly thanks to quantum communication technology. Captain Morrison, I have to ask if you understand what you are flying into. The Vorthak Dominion has 50 warships surrounding this facility. Jake nodded respectfully. We understand the situation, Commander. The Defiance is moving to engage the enemy fleet and break their siege. Elena's expression showed disbelief mixed with desperate hope. Captain, with all respect to your courage, you are one ship against 50. These are not pirates or raiders. The Vorthak Dominion is one of the most powerful military forces in this sector. Commander Rodriguez, Jake replied with a slight smile. You might be surprised what one determined ship can accomplish. Before Elena could respond, the transmission was interrupted by another signal. War Prime Gezek's reptilian face appeared on a split screen. his yellow eyes focusing on Jake with predatory interest. "So," the Vorthak leader said in his harsh, translated voice, "the mythical humans finally show themselves. I had heard rumors that your species existed, but most civilized beings consider you nothing more than stories told by drunken traders." Jake studied the alien commander. Gizak was larger than most Vorthak, with scarred scales that spoke of many battles. His teeth were filed to sharp points, and ritual markings covered his neck and arms. This was clearly a warrior who had built his reputation through violence and conquest. "War Prime Gizak," Jake said formally. "I am Captain Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiance. You are attacking a civilian facility and threatening innocent beings. Withdraw your forces immediately." The Vorthak's laugh was like the sound of crushing bones. "Withdraw? From a single primitive vessel with metal plating? Your ship appears to be built with technology we abandoned centuries ago. Do you even have proper energy shields?" "We have what we need," Jake answered calmly. Chief Engineer Lisa Harper looked up from her station where she was monitoring the fusion reactors. She was a small woman with red hair and sharp green eyes, but Jake knew she could coax more power from the Defiance's engines than anyone in the fleet. "Captain, I am reading their energy signatures," Lisa reported. "These bioships regenerate damage by redirecting biological functions. They are tough, but they have never faced kinetic weapons before." Jake nodded. That was exactly what he had been thinking. The galactic community had moved to energy-based weapons centuries ago because they were more efficient and easier to power. But humans had taken a different path, perfecting kinetic systems that could punch through any armor. Weapons Officer Paul Chen spoke up from the tactical station. He was young but had trained on every weapon system humanity had developed. "Captain, I have firing solutions on 12 enemy vessels. The railguns are charged and ready." "Not yet, Paul," Jake said. "Let's see if we can resolve this diplomatically. First," he turned back to the communication screen where War Prime Gizak was still visible. "This is your final warning, War Prime. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." Gizak's expression shifted from amusement to annoyance. "You dare threaten the Vorthak Dominion? Your single ship against my entire fleet? I will enjoy watching. Your primitive hull split open when my bioplasma tears through your metal armor." "You are free to try," Jake replied. The transmission ended abruptly as Gizak cut the connection. Jake turned to his crew, all of whom were watching him with expressions of trust and determination. These men and women had volunteered for deep space service, knowing they might face exactly this kind of situation. "Lisa, how are our power levels?" Jake asked. "Fusion reactors at full capacity, Captain," she reported. "All systems are green across the board. The armor plating is rated for direct nuclear strikes, and our point defense systems are online." "Amy, send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Inform them that we are engaging Vorthak forces in defense of Kepler Station. Include all tactical data we have gathered." "Yes, sir," Amy replied, her fingers flying over her console. "Message away, Captain." Jake looked at the tactical display again. The Defiance was still 20 minutes away from weapon range, but he could see that the Vorthak ships were beginning to turn toward them. Several of the larger bio-vessels were moving to intercept, while the rest continued their assault on the station. "Paul, what is our missile loadout?" Jake asked. 48 nuclear-tipped ship killers in the forward tubes, Captain," Paul reported with satisfaction. "Plus another 100 conventional warheads in the secondary batteries. The rail guns have unlimited ammunition as long as our power holds." Jake smiled. The galaxy might think humans were primitive, but they had never seen what good old-fashioned human engineering could do in the right hands. The Defiance might be the only Earth ship in this sector, but she was built to fight. "Captain," Amy called. "Out. Commander Rodriguez is hailing us again." Elena's face reappeared on the main screen. Her expression was troubled but determined. "Captain Morrison, my tactical officer has been analyzing your ship's configuration. Your weapons appear to be kinetic-based rather than energy systems." "That is correct, Commander," Jake confirmed. "The Vorthak bioships regenerate damage from energy weapons very quickly," Elena explained, "but they have never encountered kinetic projectiles. Your weapons might be more effective than you realize." Jake felt a surge of hope. If the enemy had no experience with kinetic weapons, then the Defiance had a real advantage. Human military doctrine was built around the idea that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. "Commander Rodriguez," Jake said, "we are going to break their siege. Keep your people ready to assist when we engage." "Understood, Captain," Elena replied. "And Jake, thank you for coming. Whatever happens, you have given us hope." The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts for a moment. In 18 minutes, the Defiance would enter weapons, range of the most powerful military fleet in this sector of space. The odds were impossible, but that had never stopped humans before. "All hands. This is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "We are about to engage a superior enemy force in defense of innocent civilians. This is why we joined the fleet, people. This is what Earth ships do. Battle stations." Throughout the Defiance, 200 crew members moved to their positions, with calm efficiency. They were about to show the galaxy what humans could do when pushed to the wall. The UES Defiance closed the distance to the Vorthak fleet at maximum acceleration, her fusion engines burning bright blue against the darkness of space. Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as enemy ships moved to intercept his vessel, their bio-organic hulls shifting and flowing like living creatures. 15 kilometers to weapons range, reported Weapons Officer Paul Chen, his hands steady on the targeting controls. Enemy vessels are spreading into attack formation. Jake could see the Vorthak strategy developing on his screens. They were trying to surround the Defiance, using their superior numbers to attack from multiple angles. It was a standard tactic that had worked against every other species they had encountered, but humans fought differently. "Lisa, I need emergency power to the forward railguns," Jake ordered. "Pull it from life support if you have to." Chief Engineer Lisa Harper's fingers flew over her console. "You have it, Captain. Reactors are running at 110% of rated capacity." "Paul, target the 3 lead ships," Jake commanded. Full spread of nuclear missiles, followed by railgun bombardment. "Let's show them what Earth weapons can do." "Aye, Captain," Paul replied with grim satisfaction. Missiles armed and ready. Railguns charged to maximum power. The distance counter on the main display reached 0. Jake took a deep breath and gave the order that would change galactic history. Fire. 48 nuclear-tipped missiles erupted from the Defiance's forward launch tubes in less than 3 seconds. They streaked toward the Vorthak fleet at tremendous speed, their fusion drives leaving trails of superheated plasma behind them. The Vorthak had never encountered nuclear weapons before. Their bioships were designed to absorb and regenerate from energy weapon damage, but they had no defense against the raw destructive power of splitting atoms. The first missile struck the lead Vorthak vessel amidships, and the nuclear explosion tore through the bioorganic hull like tissue paper. The entire ship disappeared in a brilliant flash of white light, vaporized instantly. The second and third missiles found their targets a heartbeat later. 2 more Vorthak ships vanished in nuclear fire. Their crews killed so quickly they never had time to understand what was happening to them. "Direct hits on all targets," Paul reported, his voice filled with amazement. 3 enemy ships destroyed. But Jake was not finished. As the nuclear explosions faded, the Defiance's railguns opened fire. Tungsten slugs accelerated to 15% of light speed slammed into the Vorthak formation with devastating effect. Each projectile hit with the force of a small asteroid impact. Bioorganic armor that could regenerate from energy damage simply shattered when struck by solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Hull plating designed to flex and heal instead cracked and split, venting atmosphere and biofluid into the vacuum of space. 4 more enemy vessels heavily damaged, Paul called out. 2 are breaking apart. The Vorthak fleet reacted with shock and confusion. In centuries of conquest, they had never lost 5 ships in the opening seconds of a battle. War Prime Gezak's roar of rage echoed across all communication frequencies as he ordered his remaining vessels to concentrate fire on the human ship. Streams of bioplasma struck the Defiance's armored hull, each hit designed to eat through energy shields and melt conventional armor. But human ships were not built like other vessels in the galaxy. Instead of energy barriers, the Defiance carried layers of titanium steel composite armor, 3 meters thick. The bioplasma burned and scorched the outer plating but could not penetrate to the vital systems beneath. Minor hull damage on decks 7 through 12, Lisa reported calmly. Armor is holding. No internal casualties. Jake smiled grimly. The Vorthak were learning that humans did not follow galactic conventions. While other species had pursued more efficient energy-based defenses, Earth's military had stuck with simple, reliable armor plating that could absorb tremendous punishment. "Take us into the middle of their formation," Jake ordered. "Let's fight, at close range." "Captain," Amy Davis called out from communications. "I am receiving signals from across the galaxy. Word of this battle is spreading through the quantum networks. Everyone is watching." Jake nodded but kept his attention on the tactical display. The Defiance was now surrounded by Vorthak bioships, but instead of being trapped, Jake was exactly where he wanted to be. "Paul, switch to point defense mode," he commanded. "Maximum rate of fire on all systems." The human warship became a center of destruction as every weapon system opened fire simultaneously. Railgun turrets swiveled to track targets while missile launchers sent conventional warheads into the enemy formation at point-blank range. At this distance, the Vorthak could not miss, but neither could the humans. Bioplasma beams struck the Defiance continuously, but the armored hull absorbed the damage while human weapons tore through enemy ships with mechanical precision. "Enemy vessel off the starboard bow is breaking up," Paul reported. "Another one to port is venting atmosphere." Jake watched as a Vorthak bioship tried to ram the Defiance, its damaged hull flowing like liquid as it attempted to heal battle damage. But the tungsten slugs from the human railguns punched clean through the regenerating tissue, creating wounds that could not close. "Lisa, how are our power levels?" Jake asked as another volley of bioplasma struck the ship. "Still at maximum, Captain," she replied. "The fusion reactors are handling the load perfectly. We can maintain this rate of fire for hours." That was another advantage humans had never given up. While other species had moved to more exotic power sources, Earthships still used simple nuclear fusion. It was reliable, powerful, and nearly impossible to disrupt in combat. The battle continued with savage intensity as the Defiance carved through the Vorthak formation. Human weapons designed for space combat proved devastatingly effective against bioorganic targets, while Vorthak energy weapons struggled to penetrate primitive but effective armor plating. "Captain," Amy reported, "Commander Rodriguez is hailing us from the station." Elena's face appeared on a corner of the main screen, her expression showing amazement and hope. "Captain Morrison, your ship has destroyed 12 enemy vessels. The remaining Vorthak are beginning to pull back from the station." Jake could see it on his tactical display. The Vorthak fleet was no longer pressing their attack on Kepler Station. Instead, they were focusing all their attention on the single human ship that was tearing through their ranks. "Amy, open a channel to War Prime Gezek," Jake ordered. The reptilian commander's face appeared on screen, his yellow eyes burning with rage and disbelief. Behind him, Jake could see damaged control stations and injured crew members. "Impossible," Gezek snarled. "Your primitive weapons should not be able to harm our bioships." "What kind of monsters are you?" Jake looked directly into the alien's eyes. "We are humans, War Prime, and we do not abandon innocent people to murderers like you." The transmission cut off as another railgun salvo struck Gezek's flagship, sending the massive bioship spinning, away with its hull cracked open like an egg. Throughout the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence as a single human warship fought the dreaded Vorthak Dominion to a standstill. The myths and legends were true. Humans existed, and they were everything the stories claimed, and more. The tide of battle was turning, but Jake knew the hardest part was yet to come. Warprime Gezek would not retreat easily, and desperate enemies often made the most dangerous choices. "All stations, remain alert," Jake announced to his crew. "This fight is not over yet." Across the galaxy, quantum communication networks carried the impossible news from the Kepler system. In the crystalline spires of Zephyr Prime, The Council of Songs fell silent as they watched sensor data showing a single human vessel destroying HFY warships. On the gas giant colonies of the Nebula Reach, floating cities stopped their eternal dance to observe the battle feeds. The Galactic Defense Coalition's command center on New Centauri buzzed with activity as Admiral Stone watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. His aide, a young Chithari officer named Sharpclaw of Victory, translated the incoming reports with barely contained excitement. "Admiral, the human ship has now destroyed 17 Vorthak vessels," Sharpclaw reported. "Their weapons appear to be kinetic-based projectile systems that our databases show as obsolete technology." Admiral Stone leaned back in his chair, his weathered face showing the strain of 40 years in space. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Contact our nearest fleet elements and order them to the Kepler system immediately." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison coordinated with Commander Elena Rodriguez as the battle reached its turning point. The human warship had carved a path of destruction through the center of the Vorthak formation, leaving burning bioship wreckage in its wake. "Commander Rodriguez, what is the status of your civilian evacuation?" Jake asked as another enemy vessel exploded under railgun fire. Elena's face on the communication screen showed exhaustion, mixed with desperate hope. "Captain Morrison, we have evacuated 2/3 of the civilians, but we need at least 2 more hours to complete the operation. The transport ships can only carry limited numbers." Jake studied his tactical display. The Vorthak fleet was down to 31 operational vessels, but they were regrouping for another attack. Warprime Gazak's flagship hung back from the main battle, its bioorganic hull still regenerating from the damage it had taken. "Amy, broadcast this message on all frequencies," Jake ordered, "both military and civilian channels." Communications Specialist Amy Davis nodded and prepared to transmit. "Ready, Captain." Jake stood up from his command chair and faced the main camera. His uniform was torn from flying debris, and a cut on his forehead showed where he had been thrown against a bulkhead during the fighting. But his voice was steady and clear. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance, speaking to all beings in this system and throughout the galaxy. We are here because innocent people called for help, and humans do not ignore such calls. The Vorthak Dominion has built its power on fear and brutality, but today that ends." The message went out across the quantum networks, reaching every inhabited system in the galaxy within minutes. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived in fear of Vorthak expansion suddenly saw hope. Warprime Gezek received the transmission on his damaged flagship and roared with renewed fury. He had lost more ships in this single battle than in the past 10 years of conquest combined. The reputation of Vorthak invincibility was crumbling with each human weapon strike. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Gizak ordered his remaining commanders. "I want that primitive ship destroyed even if we have to ram it with every vessel in the fleet." The Vorthak attack came with desperate intensity. 30 bioships converged on the Defiance from all directions, their plasma weapons creating a storm of corrosive energy that would have vaporized any other vessel in the galaxy. But the Defiance was built to human standards. Her armor plating absorbed hit after hit, while her weapons continued their mechanical destruction of enemy targets. Chief Engineer Lisa Harper pushed the fusion reactors beyond all safety limits, channeling massive power to the railgun systems. "Hull, temperature is rising beyond safe levels," Lisa reported, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked her controls. "But we can maintain power for another 30 minutes at this rate." Weapons Officer Paul Chen had settled into a rhythm of destruction, his targeting systems tracking multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. "Captain, I count 19 more enemy ships destroyed or disabled. They are down to 12 operational vessels." Jake nodded, but he could see the problem developing on his tactical display. The Defiance was taking continuous damage, and while her armor held, systems were beginning to fail under the constant bombardment. "Captain," Amy called out, "I am receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Stone at Coalition Command." The Admiral's gruff face appeared on a side screen, his expression showing both admiration and concern. "Captain Morrison, the entire galaxy is watching this battle. You have achieved something no military force has accomplished in decades, but our nearest reinforcements are still 8 hours away. Jake understood the unspoken message. The Defiance could not hold out that long against the remaining Vorthak ships, especially with War Prime Gezek's flagship still intact and dangerous. "Admiral, we will continue the engagement as long as possible," Jake replied. "The civilian evacuation must be completed." "Understood, Captain," Admiral Stone said. "Earth Command has been notified of your actions. Whatever happens, know that you have made humanity proud." The transmission ended as another massive explosion rocked the Defiance. One of the Vorthak ships had managed to get close enough for a suicide run, detonating its bioplasma reserves against the human ship's armor. "Forward armor plating is compromised," Lisa reported. "We have hull breaches on decks 1 through 3. Jake made a decision that would define the rest of the battle. Instead of pulling back to repair damage, he ordered the Defiance to close with the enemy flagship. "Paul, prepare all remaining nuclear missiles," Jake commanded. "Target War Prime, Gezek's ship directly." "Captain, we only have 6 missiles left," Paul warned. "If we miss this shot, we will not get another chance." "Then we do not miss," Jake replied simply. The Defiance accelerated toward the massive Vorthak flagship, her damaged hull streaming atmosphere and coolant into space. The remaining enemy ships tried to intercept, but human point defense systems carved through their formation with mechanical precision. War Prime Gezek saw the human ship approaching and realized what was happening. The primitive vessel was making a direct attack on his flagship, ignoring all tactical doctrine in favor of a straight fight between commanders. "So be it," Gezek snarled. "If the human wants a warrior's death, I will give it to him." The 2 massive warships closed on each other like ancient knights charging across a battlefield. Around them, the galaxy watched in stunned silence as species that had never heard of humans learned what the word courage truly meant. On Kepler Station, Commander Elena Rodriguez coordinated the final stages of the civilian evacuation while monitoring the battle. The transport ships were nearly loaded with the last refugees, but they would need at least another hour to clear the system safely. "Commander," Lieutenant Kim reported, "Captain Morrison is engaging the Vorthak flagship directly. His ship has taken severe damage." Elena watched the tactical display showing the 2 vessels approaching each other at tremendous speed. She had served in the military for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like the courage the human captain was displaying. "Signal all evacuation transports," she ordered. "Increase speed to maximum. Captain Morrison is buying us time with his life." The message went out to the fleeing civilian ships and across dozens of species. Beings who had never heard of Earth began to understand what it meant to be human. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The U.S. Defiance and the Vorthak flagship closed the final distance between them like 2 titans rushing toward mutual destruction. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his damaged bridge, watching as War Prime Gezek's massive bioship filled the main screen. "Captain, the enemy flagship is charging some kind of ramming attack," Weapons Officer Paul Chen reported, his voice steady despite the impossible situation. "They are going to try to destroy us through direct collision." Jake nodded, calmly. He had expected this. When powerful enemies were backed into a corner, they often chose to die fighting rather than accept defeat. It was something humans understood very well. "Lisa, transfer all remaining power to forward weapons," Jake ordered. "Amy, send one final message to Commander Rodriguez." Chief Engineer Lisa Harper's hands flew over her controls as she rerouted every available system to the railguns and missile tubes. "You have everything we can give you, Captain." Communications Specialist Amy Davis established the connection to Kepler Station. "Channel open, sir." Jake looked directly into the camera, his blue eyes reflecting the determination that had carried humanity to the stars. "Commander Rodriguez, this is our final transmission. Complete the evacuation and get those civilian ships to safety. It has been an honor to fight beside the coalition." On Kepler Station, Commander Elena Rodriguez watched the human captain with tears in her eyes. Around her, the mixed-species crew of the facility stood in respectful silence. They were witnessing something that would be remembered for generations across the galaxy. Captain Morrison, Elena replied, her voice thick with emotion. On behalf of every being you have saved today, thank you. The galaxy will remember what humanity did here. The transmission ended as the two massive warships entered the final phase of their collision course. War Prime Gezek appeared on the main screen one last time, his reptilian features twisted with rage and desperate fury. You have cost me my fleet, human, Gezek snarled. But you will die with me, and your species will be hunted to extinction for this insult to the Dominion. Jake looked at the alien commander with calm eyes. War Prime, you made one critical mistake. You threatened innocent people under human protection. Before Gezek could respond, Jake gave his final order as captain of the Defiance. Paul, fire everything we have. 6 nuclear missiles erupted from the Defiance's forward tubes while every railgun on the ship opened fire simultaneously. The weapons struck the Vorthak flagship at point-blank range, tearing massive holes through its bioorganic structure. At the same moment, War Prime Gezek's ship slammed into the Defiance with the force of a small asteroid. The collision destroyed both vessels in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire Kepler system like a new star. The shockwave from the explosion knocked the remaining Vorthak ships tumbling through space while debris rained down on Kepler station shields. For several minutes, the entire system was silent except for the crackling of cooling metal and the hiss of escaping atmosphere. Then, slowly, the surviving Vorthak commanders began to transmit surrender signals. This is Sub-Commander Vexhai of the Vorthak 7th Fleet, came a shaken voice over the communication networks. We acknowledge defeat and request permission to withdraw from this system. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood in her damaged command center, hardly believing what she was hearing. The mighty Vorthak Dominion, terror of a dozen sectors, was surrendering to a force they had outnumbered 50 to 1. Permission granted, Elena replied formally. Withdraw immediately and do not return to Coalition space. As the Vorthak ships limped away from Kepler Station, emergency signals began arriving from across the galaxy. Rescue vessels, news crews, and diplomatic envoys were all racing toward the system where a single human ship had changed the course of galactic history. Search and rescue operations began immediately among the debris of the 2 destroyed flagships. Chief Engineer Lisa Harper was found unconscious in an escape pod, her red hair singed but her vital signs stable. Communications specialist Amy Davis and 17 other crew members were recovered from a damaged section of the Defiance's hull that had somehow held together. Captain Jake Morrison was never found. 3 days later, representatives from 47 different species gathered at Kepler Station for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The crystalline chambers built into the station's outer hull had been hastily converted into a meeting space, large enough to accommodate the diverse forms of galactic civilization. Admiral Stone arrived aboard the Coalition flagship Resolute, bringing with him the official Earth response to the battle. The document he carried would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. Members of the Galactic Council, Admiral Stone began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. I bring greetings from the government of Earth and the human colonies. We formally accept the invitation to join this body as a full member species. The announcement caused a ripple of excitement through the assembled delegates. Species that had dismissed humans as myths now competed to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. But Admiral Stone was not finished. However, Earth's membership comes with certain conditions. We propose the establishment of a galactic protection service, with human ships and crews dedicated to defending civilian populations from military aggression. The proposal was revolutionary. Never before had a species offered to serve as protectors for others without seeking territorial or economic gain in return. Commander Elena Rodriguez, now promoted to admiral for her role in the defense of Kepler Station, stood to address the council. I served alongside Captain Morrison and his crew during the battle. They fought not for conquest or glory, but because innocent beings were in danger. This is what humanity offers the galaxy: protection for those who cannot protect themselves. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Protection Service was established with Earth as its primary sponsor and human ships as its backbone. Construction began immediately on a new class of vessels based on the design principles of the Defiance. 6 months later, a memorial service was held in Earth orbit aboard the completed UES Morrison, the first of the new protection fleet. Representatives from every known species attended, bringing gifts and honors for the crew that had saved Kepler Station. Chief Engineer Lisa Harper, now wearing the uniform of a commander in the protection service, stood before the memorial wall listing the names of those lost in the battle. Captain Jake Morrison's name was inscribed at the top, followed by the 83 crew members who had died when the Defiance rammed the Vorthak flagship. They showed us what it means to be human, Lisa said to the assembled mourners. Not our technology or our weapons, but our willingness to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. In the years that followed, human ships became a common sight throughout the galaxy. The protection service grew into a force that no aggressor could ignore, while Earth's colonies expanded peacefully into systems offered by grateful alien governments. Children of dozens of species learned about the Battle of Kepler Station in their schools, and many chose to join the protection service when they came of age. The human concept of fighting to protect others, regardless of species or reward, spread throughout galactic civilization. War Prime Gezek had been wrong about one thing. Humanity was not hunted to extinction. Instead, they became the guardians of a galaxy that had finally learned the difference between conquest and protection. The UES Defiance was gone, but her legacy lived on in every human ship that answered a distress call, in every protection service crew that put themselves between civilians and danger, and in the simple idea that sometimes one determined ship could change the course of history. On Kepler Station, now expanded into a major trading hub and protection service base, a simple plaque marked the spot where Commander Elena Rodriguez had first spoken with Captain Jake Morrison. The inscription was in both Galactic Standard and English. Here humans proved that courage knows no boundaries, and sacrifice honors all life. The galaxy had found its protectors, and they wore the flag of a small blue world that refused to let innocent people face danger alone,